Mercedes shocked everyone by taking first and second place in the second practice session for the Bahrain Grand Prix. However, Lewis Hamilton said that Mercedes' race pace is nowhere near what Red Bull has. Max Verstappen and his Red Bull team are the heavy favorites to win both championship titles in the 2024 season. However, the first day of racing on the F1 2024 track made many people question whether Red Bull really has the pace advantage they think they do. Is Mercedes really back? Do they finally have a winning car with their new W15? Let's take a look on some technical specs and see what can we expect from them and other teams that impressed us during the practice sessions. Based on what it has, Bahrain is a very interesting and real racetrack. Engineers have to work hard to make it work in all types of conditions because it has both slow and fast turns and long straightaways. We can expect both the front and back wings to have medium amounts of downforce. The unique thing about this track is that it starts when the sun goes down, making the second half of the track more or less a night race. This means that the temperature of the asphalt will drop at some point, which could make the tires not work as well. The track surface is also very rough, which is why Pirelli chose the hardest tires they could find: C1, C2, and C3. Based on what we know about last year's cars, this type of track seems to be best for Red Bull. A year ago, they easily won this race, with Max coming in first and Perez coming in second. It's always exciting to watch the first race of the season though, because engineers and fans don't know everything about it yet. Most of the time, the third free practice session tells you the most about what to expect in qualifying. But in Bahrain, things are different. Thursday afternoon, FP2 began at 16 o'clock, the same time as the race on Friday. There is a lot less sunlight in Bahrain after 17 o'clock, when qualifying starts. It is also much colder then, during FP1 and FP3. This is the time for all drivers and teams to finish qualifying and long runs during the second free practice. In the second practice session, Hamilton actually set the fastest time from the beginning to the end, which made some people in the paddock look twice. Lewis Hamilton and George Russell got first and second places in the second practice in Bahrain, which made Mercedes fans happy. But after all the happiness he brought to his fans, Hamilton thinks Red Bull is still clearly ahead of the rest. FP1, we were surprised. It was very windy this morning, so it was a really difficult session I think for everyone, Hamilton told Sky F1. The track was so different compared to last week. It was feeling okay, but we didn't really know where we stood on the C2 tire. And then in this session, FP2, the car, we made some improvements over the session. It's a shock to see us where we are. We'll take it for now. But we can't get ahead of ourselves. We need to keep our heads down, keep working on the setup to try and extract more. I think our long run pace is nowhere near the Red Bulls, for example. And I think we were a lot closer, so we've got some work to do there. They look much better than they did at the start of last season and very stable on the track. A very interesting part of the front suspension that Mercedes changed after the first day of testing got a lot of attention. It has to do with the shape of the upper wishbone element, or anti-dive, which has a big impact on how balanced the car is. Remember how Lewis Hamilton complained several times last year that the car wasn't balanced right and that he didn't like where he was sitting? This year, Mercedes fixed that by moving the whole cockpit backwards, so that the weight is better spread between the front and rear axles. Mercedes, on the other hand, can now change the mentioned front suspension part based on how the track is set up. This can give them a lot more freedom, and the balance should be much better than with last year's W14. Hamilton said that in theory, he knows how to close the gap to Red Bull, but that he hasn't been able to do it yet because he is still learning how the Mercedes W15 works. Still, Hamilton thinks that Mercedes are in a battle with Ferrari, McLaren, and Aston Martin for the title of best of the rest. Verstappen, on the other hand, will likely do his famous disappearing act out front at the Grand Prix on Saturday, if he can avoid any early holdups. I do, said Hamilton, after being asked on whether he knows how to close the gap to Red Bull. In terms of achieving that, I don't know how necessarily with a new car. With a new car, you have all new tools, everything's been redesigned, and so all the previous numbers and names for things are completely shifted. So you're learning a whole new vocabulary when it comes to the car setup. And we've tested some of them, but not all of them, because we only had a day and a half, so we'll have to see. I hope that we can make a step. I've got a bit of an idea. but I don't know how to achieve that yet currently, with the setup changes without affecting the other side of things. Single lap. I think we're going to be in the mix. I think it's a bit too early to say, but I think we're there or thereabouts with Ferrari and maybe Aston and McLaren. I don't know exactly where we lay with those guys, but we're around those, so it's going to close. A nice battle with us. I think if Max is in the front, he will veer off as he has done for the last couple of years. Hamilton's time of 1:30.374 put him at the top of the standings after the second Bahrain GP practice session. His Mercedes teammate George Russell came in second, which gave Mercedes hope after the first day of F1 2024 track action. Fernando Alonso of Aston Martin rounded out the top three. Verstappen's sixth-place finish raised a lot of questions going into qualifying, as we wait to see if Red Bull is still hiding how well that RB20 really works. The good things being said about Mercedes might not be quite ready yet. Max Verstappen already said after the second free practice that he wasn't worried, because he thought that other teams would have already loosened up their engines a bit. He does think that qualifying will be close. I think it was not too bad. It's just that I think it's very close. Maybe some people around us already turned up the engine a bit. You know, in terms of top speed, we just need to focus on ourselves. And I think today, there were some small balance problems on the front to rear. We just need to find that sweet spot, especially around here with the rough tarmac. Once you get it into that sweet spot, you just pick up time, and that is what we'll try to focus on a little bit more tomorrow, explained the Dutchman. Asked if they have already found the right setup, Verstappen replied, "It's just trying to get into it, and then you feel a little bit happier with the car. But at the end of the day, you also just want to focus a bit on the long run, because that's where the car really needs to work. Of course, qualifying is important. But yeah, we need to make sure that the car is in good shape for the race." Verstappen said he already thought that some other teams had messed up the engine. When asked about it, he said, "I mean, I don't say everyone around us did that, but a few did, so I'm not too worried about the gap to P1, for example. But it's going to be very close, I think, in qualifying. So that's going to be very nice. The long run, I was a bit happier about that, but again, also there are few little things that we can do better." Verstappen, the defending champion, did his first push lap on the softs, but fell short by half a second. Meanwhile, Leclerc and Kevin Magnussen were having a hard time keeping their cars on the road through the last corner, with Leclerc asking for a check of the floor on his Ferrari SF24 after that rough ride over the curbs. Russell in the Mercedes was having a hard time with turn 11 because he was kicking up sand in the runoff, while Verstappen was complaining that too much air was coming into my helmet. After the practice, Russells didn't seem too overjoyed about their performance. I mean, we can't get carried away with ourselves the Brit starts. The qualifying pace was really strong. We still need to try and understand why it was so good. We made some changes from the tests, and it exceeded our expectations, but ultimately, the long-run pace, which is where it all happens, Max was still ahead of us. It was very close with Fernando, with Lando, and the Ferraris. And Lewis and I were very similar as well. 100%. We need to sit down and understand where this increased performance is, where it's come from, whether it's a one-off, whether we can maintain this. Qualifying will be run on Friday. Then it will become clear how the teams really stand. After a huge amount of waiting after a long vacation, F1 is back, and in a big way. It seems that all the teams are coming strongly with newer upgrades to conquer the very first place that Max Verstappen and the Red Bull team had achieved for the last 2 seasons. Do you trust Mercedes in winning races again? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below.